qui consiste à dire qu'on n'a pas fait peut-être le lien qu'il faudrait entre la session 1 et la session 2, en ce sens que c'est vrai que l'aménagement du sol, et notamment les pratiques agricoles, ont un effet sur les phénomènes de ruissellement ou de concentration des crues. Donc, c'est une lacune, mais on va garder ça en mémoire. Merci, Guillaume. Bien, nous allons recommencer donc le thème de la troisième table ronde porte sur les indicateurs de vulnérabilité, de qualité des eaux et des sols. Ces indicateurs sont évidemment des outils très importants pour la gestion de l'occupation des sols, en particulier pour les règles d'urbanisme, peut-être pour les pratiques agricoles aussi. Donc, nous allons écouter avec attention Madame Fabienne Trollard de l'INRAE qui va nous parler justement d'un travail de mise au point d'indicateurs de vulnérabilité sur la nappe de la Crau. Monsieur Marco Marani de l'Université de Padoue et qui est membre de l'Accademia dei Lincei, et monsieur Van Nisrouli d'Albanie. Donc je donne tout de suite la parole à Madame Fabienne Trollard qui va intervenir en premier. Vous avez la parole, vous avez donc environ 12 minutes pour intervenir, mais ne parlez pas trop vite.
Oui, l'avantage c'est que les diapositives sont en anglais, donc pour la lectrice en anglais, normalement le texte est dans la traduction. Donc effectivement, je vais vous parler d'indicateurs. Donc on a deux pressions très importantes sur les territoires qui jouent sur leur stabilité. C'est d'abord l'étalement urbain, qui est effectivement un facteur de productivité, mais qui est aussi une pression extrêmement forte sur les ressources en sol et en eau. Ici, vous avez une illustration de l'extension urbaine en rouge de la croissance urbaine d'Istanbul entre 1960 et 2005. Pardon. La deuxième pression que l'on a aussi sur le territoire qui joue sur la stabilité, c'est effectivement le changement climatique qui effectivement rend des services écosystémiques par les espaces naturels et agricoles. Mais les performances de ces services sont effectivement remises en question puisqu'on a des modifications climatiques locales et que ces changements climatiques peuvent avoir des effets positifs mais aussi négatifs sur les services écosystémiques. Donc on est face à un nouveau paradigme. En fait, il faut vraiment raisonner le territoire comme un espace limité et avec des ressources naturelles également limitées. Et donc l'approche classique habituelle, encore qui est très très forte aujourd'hui, c'est d'avoir des approches sectorielles où on fait de temps en temps un point. Et puis, en fait, il faut changer complètement, il faut passer vraiment à une approche complètement intégrée et surtout avoir une vision dynamique dans le temps, c'est-à-dire à la fois sur l'évolution historique et se permettre des perspectives à moyen terme. Donc, le sol et l'eau, en fait, ce sont vraiment les ressources de base pour le développement local. Et comme ces ressources sont finies, en fait, il faut vraiment avoir un autre point de vue en matière de gestion. Et donc les autorités locales, les environnements, d'avoir déjà une vision globale et intégrée de leur territoire, de tester des scénarios intégrant les différentes pressions qui ont lieu sur le territoire, à la fois sur les aspects physiques, mais aussi socio-économiques et liés au changement climatique, et de visualiser en fait avant la réalisation du choix des projets ce que va être l'évolution de ces ressources dans le temps, de façon à pouvoir les pérenniser dans le temps. Donc, on a une chance, c'est que en fait, avec le développement des technologies numériques, on a effectivement la possibilité de nouveaux champs de possibles pour aborder ce genre de questions, notamment pour avoir une meilleure analyse des trajectoires historiques de l'utilisation des terres en particulier et des ressources, et aussi d'avoir la possibilité de faire des prospectives à moyen terme. Mais ça nécessite effectivement ce changement de paradigme et surtout de d'une meilleure utilisation, d'une utilisation renouvelée à la fois d'indicateurs et de modèles digitaux. Alors pour démarrer en fait la réflexion, on est parti en fait de la réflexion qu'avait fait l'OCDE sur le concept de pression, état, impact et réponse. Et nous l'avons décliné là en particulier sur la notion de ressources naturelles, donc avec la pression des activités humaines, faire l'état à la fois sur les sols et l'eau, voir quels étaient les impacts et les risques que l'on avait à prendre en compte, et en fonction du projet qui était prévu sur le territoire, voir en quoi ces ressources étaient impactées, et en fait on fait une boucle de retour. Alors qu'est-ce que c'est un indicateur? Un indicateur, c'est une mesure, c'est une quantité qui est à la fois observable et mesurable. Et surtout, ce qui est important, c'est qu'on puisse voir son évolution au cours du temps et dans l'espace. Et donc, l'idée, c'est effectivement de pouvoir suivre son évolution à la fois dans le passé. Vous avez abandonné la variabilité de cet indicateur, de faire un état zéro, et ensuite de faire la prospective suivant différents scénarios en essayant de fixer un objectif de valeur à laquelle on voudrait qu'il arrive de certains temps. Donc ça, c'est bien connu. Alors je vais en parler d'un en particulier qui est celui qu'on avait apparaître et qui était proposé par des économistes, parce qu'à la fin, il s'agissait de mettre des euros et des dollars à la fin. Donc c'est le weight of footprint, donc l'empreinte de l'eau. Et c'est une notion qui a été, un concept qui a été proposé en 2002 et retravaillé en 2011. Et cet indicateur, en fait, est un indicateur volumétrique qui donne l'impact de toutes les activités humaines sur un espace limité et dans une période de temps définie. On a exactement une bonne définition d'un indicateur. Et cet indicateur il est également divisé en trois, avec la partie verte, correspond en fait aux pluies à l'évapotranspiration, aux eaux bleues, donc c'est les eaux de surface et souterraines, et un indicateur qui dit gris, qui en fait correspond au volume d'eau nécessaire pour retrouver une qualité d'eau qui permet de la remettre dans les catégories bleues. Alors en termes de modélisation, en fait, on a trois familles aujourd'hui de modèles. Donc on a les modèles déterministes, qui décrivent toutes les équations physiques, chimiques, biologiques, etc. Donc ils sont en général très gourmands en données, en variables, en paramètres, etc. Vous avez un deuxième groupe de modèles qui sont dits stochastiques, donc qui eux sont basés sur des données statistiques, probabilistes, et qui font une analyse de retour des événements à la fois dans l'espace et dans le temps. Et aujourd'hui, on a une troisième famille qui est en train d'émerger maintenant depuis moins de 10 ans, qui sont les modèles dits orientés objet. C'est-à-dire qu'on va essayer de faire une représentation de la réalité avec des objets qui sont composites, dont on connaît parfaitement le comportement et les états. Alors a priori, il n'y a pas de conflit entre ces trois types de modélisation, et quand on veut faire de la modélisation territoriale, il ne faut pas hésiter du tout à utiliser ces trois types de modèles. Dans le choix quand même des modèles orientés objets, l'avantage par rapport à un SIG où la couche d'information, on ne sait jamais à quel objet appartient l'information, on peut être obligé de calculer tout dans toutes les cases. Le modèle orienté objet, lui, on permet de calculer en fait les choses sur chaque objet, et en fait ensuite il s'agit simplement de les connecter. Et quand vous regardez un paysage, vous avez toujours des structures qui sont homogènes, que vous pouvez délimiter. Et l'idée, c'est effectivement de faire un lien entre ces différentes entités, en définissant des variables, en associant parfois des modèles de calcul et des fonctions. Le tout, c'est la difficulté, c'est effectivement d'arriver au bon niveau d'abstraction pour faire la représentation des objets et que ça puisse être traité de manière informatique derrière. Bien passé. Voilà. Donc, on va passer ça très vite. Donc, on a mis ça notamment dans un logiciel américain qui s'appelle WIP, qui est très utilisé en fait dans les pays du Sud, notamment en Europe. Parce qu'en Europe, il faut le payer. Voilà, la raison. Et du coup, ça permet de représenter son bassin versant, quelle que soit sa taille. Là, c'est l'exemple du bassin de la méditerranée en Tunisie, où où on se retrouve avec quelque chose qui est comme un circuit électrique, avec des lois de Kirchhoff, avec des nœuds et un réseau. Et dans ce système-là, en fait, il suffit de simplement calibrer et de choisir les objets, les connecter, d'avoir une base de données même sur une année et de voir si le système fonctionne. Voilà le résultat. Alors, en fait, en termes de données, on a utilisé les données satellites sur Google Earth, on a utilisé une année de données acquises sur le terrain, et donc on arrive à représenter en fait la quantité d'eau. Alors, ce sont les eaux de surface disponibles dans le bassin versant, donc plus la couleur elle est bleu foncé, plus en fait on a des risques en moins. Plus la couleur est rouge, plus en fait on a des risques. Et donc les sous-bassins versants, il y en a un en tout cas qui devient rouge, c'est un sous-bassin sur lequel il faut avoir une attention particulière, où effectivement l'empreinte de l'eau devient négative. Avec une prospective simplement, avec une définition d'un scénario là qui était très très simple, simplement démographique. Donc on a fait le calcul en 2016, on s'est projeté en 2030, on voit qu'effectivement un certain nombre de sous-bassins changent de couleur. Et donc, un gestionnaire, comme il n'a pas la possibilité forcément de suivre tout un bassin versant qui là fait plusieurs millions de kilomètres carrés, c'est de se concentrer sur les zones à risque en priorité pour faire l'analyse plus détaillée. Voilà. Donc, pour aller plus loin dans cette approche, on a été jusqu'à ici faire carrément une chaîne d'analyse territoriale intégrée. On tient compte à la fois des contraintes socio-économiques, de l'urbanisation, du changement climatique, et on décline derrière des indicateurs qui concernent la dégradation des sols, les ressources en eau, et aussi les productions agricoles, puisqu'on met la production agricole aussi dans les ressources. Voilà. Donc on a 15 indicateurs qui sont publiés comme ceci. Et donc là c'est pareil, on peut faire des analyses à la fois historiques et prospectives. Alors je vais vous donner juste un résultat en matière de prospective, si ça va bien passer. Voilà. Donc on a fait la simulation dans le futur à l'horizon 2030-2040 en calibrant le système sur les années 97-2009 pour l'extension urbaine et 2001-2010, parce qu'en général pour les modèles agricoles, on a des cadres pour caler les modèles. Et simplement le résultat, en combinant les 4 scénarios concernant les changements climatiques, le changement d'occupation des sols et l'utilisation des eaux, on a regardé ce qui se passait sur la nappe de la Crau. Donc c'est là, c'est la situation actuelle, on a effectivement les couleurs bleues qui montrent un bon débordement de la nappe de la Crau au sud du système. Ici, on fait le calcul à l'horizon 2030. Voilà. Donc on arrive en fait simplement en diminuant de 14% les prairies irriguées qui sont destinées à partir sous l'urbanisation. En fait on réduit l'apport de l'eau dans la nappe de 31% et donc une diminution de la capacité à fournir de l'eau sur le territoire de l'ordre de 1%, ce qui a pour conséquence de probablement conduire à des déficits chroniques, notamment pour l'eau potable. Une remontée du eau salée, alors il y a une étude en cours qui est en train de cartographier de manière très précise, parce qu'en fait on s'est rendu compte qu'il remontait jusqu'au bout de France. Et puis de mettre aussi en danger toutes les zones de marais qui ont une biodiversité qui est remarquable. Donc en conclusion, effectivement, l'eau et le sol, ce sont vraiment des ressources qui deviennent rares. Alors je distinguerai quand même le sol de l'eau, parce que le sol, lui, en fait, ce n'est pas une ressource, mais c'est un capital. Donc une fois à partir du moment où il est parti sur le temps, c'est très difficile de le récupérer. Et que, en fait, vraiment, le message, et dans l'IPCC aussi, c'est d'arriver vraiment à une action territoriale et donc de développer des outils qui soient vraiment à l'usage des collectivités locales. Alors, dans l'ordre des impacts et des pressions, effectivement, c'est l'urbanisation qui doit prendre les ordres, le changement climatique qui n'arrive qu'au deuxième. Et on applique le principe de Lavoisier, hein. Rien ne se perd, rien ne se crée, tout se transforme, et bien sur le territoire, c'est exactement la même chose, et donc c'est pas la peine de vouloir faire du développement alors que les ressources ne sont pas.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. avez respecté votre temps de façon remarquable. Vous n'avez pas parlé trop vite et c'était très intéressant. Nous allons passer donc à M. Marco Marani qui va nous parler de Venise. Ça fait rêver évidemment tout le monde.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be speaking to a community that's new to me, and hopefully I will be bringing some useful information. I'm afraid that we'll depart slightly from the indicator topic that we're given here. I'll provide an overview of a case that I think is illustrative of conflicting objectives that need to be pursued in the context of natural resources. And I think some of the concepts that were put forward by my predecessor can be applied here. So this is the teamwork, and you see some of the colleagues who've been working with these topics with me. I will be dealing with Venice and its lagoon, which is an entirely different environment. I have to warn you, I have way too many slides for the time that I have, so I will be skipping over many of them. I will be happy to discuss after the fact if you're interested. So Venice, it's a very artificial environment. It's been managed for centuries, and it's treated as a natural environment, which leads to many misunderstandings as to the objectives that should be pursued. Should we preserve the lagoon as it is? Does it have any meaning? It's a completely artificial environment, or we should make for ourselves more reasonable goals. And I will skip quickly over this. Starting in the 1300s, the Serenissima Republic started diverting rivers out to the sea because the lagoon was setting up. The modern configuration is certainly not natural. It has jetties. The main rivers have been diverted out. There have been extensive land reclamation. It's really more like a garden, a well-tended garden than a natural environment. This environment is subject to fast dynamics, and we could call it degradation from an anthropocentric point of view, because in red you see the salt marshes that have been disappearing over the last century. More than half of the total area that was present at the beginning of the 20th century is now gone due to subsidence, due to sea level rise, due to erosion. And it's being converted to tidal flats or permanently submerged areas. And of course this is a matter of concern. Why is that happening? Should we do something about it? Can we do something about it? The overall picture is one of a struggle between elements, land and sea struggling to overcome each other. And that's how a transition environment such as the Venice Lagoon, but many other environments worldwide are born and it exists ephemerally, I would contend, because no natural dynamics actually ensures the permanent existence of these environments. And I thought it would be fitting to remark that vegetation is playing an important role in the way these environments can keep up with sea level rise. Sea levels have been increasing for centuries, actually millennia, and the way these environments can exist is also through organic soil production, which accounts for a significant amount of the accretion that these environments have to put on the table in order to exist despite sea level rise. But this would be kind of a side topic. The main problem here is that besides vegetation, organic productivity, there is no sediment coming into the lagoon due to the choices that they made centuries ago. And so this environment has to sustain an increasing rate of sea level rise with less and less constructive material, something that you can use to build the environment up. And so there's a chronic sediment deficit that is affecting the lagoon. And this is one of the causes of all the red areas that you see, that is marshes that have disappeared over time. And this is a result of our choices of the past. So, of course, it's important to understand before we make further choices, and understand how we can reconcile conflicting uses of these resources. Marshes are an important ecosystem service provider, say CO2 uptake, for example, nursery for marine life, there's a variety, defense from floods, and so forth. So it's a resource that we need to manage somehow, posing realistic objectives that often, oops, that is something that I shouldn't have, okay, that is realistic. And this is the management plan that at the University of Padova we led. I had the honor of leading the formulation of the management plan for the Venice Lagoon that is going to be implemented, hopefully. Bureaucratic slowness apart. That puts in place a lot of interventions that are, again, a gardening of the environment. We need to be able to take care of this environment in a sustainable way, and we need to decide what sustainable means. All these, and I won't describe all these interventions, are aimed at three main objectives: reduction of erosion, reduction of sediment transfer to the sea, that are two of the main causes of degradation, and increased inorganic and organic sediment productivity in particular. Through these interventions, the result we were able to obtain, evaluated through models, hydrodynamic models, to sediment transport. There's a complexity of models that have been used to make this assessment. Is the reduction of the deficit from about 600,000 cubic meters per year that are lost by marshes mostly, to about 179. So we're not able to reverse this tendency, and that's a fact. That's something we have to face, that we have to deal with. It's not realistic to think, as some environmental movements want to do, it's not realistic to invert the dynamics that is taking place. I will skip on the heat area, the reclaimed land area, and we'll go back to the climate change aspect that is so central to what we're talking about here today. Here, climate change mostly means mean sea level change, and these are projections from not the last. We're updating this with the last IPCC that was delivered in July. This is 2013 IPCC projections for these pixel here, just in the northern Adriatic. So it's a specific rate of sea level change projected for that area. And in this case, is the RCP 8.5. Is one of the most extreme scenarios of change, which serves as an illustrator. And this is about 50 centimeters of increase in sea level. What do these 50 centimeters mean for Venice? So this is a Canaletto painting for those who've been to Venice. This is Punta Dogana. This is seen from St. Mark's Square, looking out Punta Dogana. And we'll take these two figures to have a feeling of what it means to be flooded in Venice. This is flooding in Venice, the big flood, the big high tide of 1966. About 110 centimeters in St. Mark's Square. At the time of Canaletto in 1750, this would have been just 75 centimeters. And this is due to the compound effect of sea level rise and subsidence. Projection to the future, this is what will happen if the same event occurs. And of course, we can also look at the spatial extent. In blue, either light or dark, is the amount of the city that is flooded just by 120 centimeters, a minor flooding. And that's why the Moses system has been built and is now operational since last year, and with some problems that I can elaborate on. But it's effectively defending the city, protecting the city from high tides. And in fact, you can see here, if we take 120 centimeters as reference, that is the level that will flood the blue area, then you see, projecting to the future using IPCC scenarios, these are the number of days of flooding over time, without the Moses in black. So now, 3 days per year, 9 days a year by 2050, but then steeply increasing to basically once every 2 days. And of course that's not sustainable. With the Moses, the red line, that's what will happen. But this is very effective, right? But this is also interfering with a lot of things. Life in the city. This is the number of closures that we'll have to put in place to obtain these results. So this is the number of floodings around above 120 centimeters, 0 floodings above 120 centimeters with the Moses, but it comes at a cost of closures. How many closures do I need to do that? 7 closures per year, 7 days per year closed now, steeply increasing to 260 days per year by the end of the century, which is clearly unfeasible. I mean, the city will not function, the harbor, the port will not function, the lagoon, the environment will not function. And what else will not work? If we look at, this is a paper in press, it's coming out soon, that we worked on with colleagues. This shows the inundation depth of tidal waters with respect to sea level. And this is the sedimentation rate, the amount of sediment gets on the salt marshes. This is what is needed for the environment to keep up with sea level rise. And this mostly takes place, you see the highest levels of sedimentation rates are for the highest water levels, not surprisingly, during storms. These are precisely the storms that the Moses system is keeping out of the system. So as we're protecting the city, we're actually accelerating the demise of the lagoon because we're decreasing its ability to adapt to sea level, to an increasing sea level. So, almost on time. Just some conclusions. I think this is Venice is an experiment, a real-life experiment in climate change and in managing environment under climate change, in which we have conflicting objectives that clearly need to be reconciled. Should we save the city? The lagoon? Should we, well, I haven't talked about the watershed. It's a kind of a short blanket syndrome. The blanket has a certain area, and we can put it in one direction or the other, but then a choice has to be made based on facts, based on projections of climate change, and based on the tools that are being discussed in this meeting. So, with this, thank you for your attention, and I will take questions, I guess, after the vote.
Nous devrions avoir du temps pour les questions après ces 3 exposés. Monsieur Zoli,
thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, as a soil scientist, I think I would like to spare a few words about the functions and the position of the soil, which stand at the center of the ecosystems. It reflects what's happening around, from the biosphere, including humans, atmosphere, lithosphere, where the soil derives, and the hydrosphere, because soil does have also atmosphere. say it stands the soil at the center of the ecosystems. Now, if you look at it globally, and it was mentioned also by the previous speakers, it is only the shallow layer, which we also call the skin of the earth, that provides the food that we eat. 95% of that comes from the soil, and 99 more of the calories. So we have to take care of that very carefully. Now, I don't need to explain what is the difference between land and soil, but soil is part of the land, and the land is much wider concept. Okay, I'm getting confused with this. In 2015 was the International Year of Soil by the UN, and you can see here that there are so many functions and services that the soil provides. Well, the most important is the provision of the food, fiber, or the biomass. And I would say that soil could be considered somehow as the biggest employer, because there are more than 570 million farms globally, according to the FAO, and they rely on soil for their livelihood, but also for the food that we eat. In addition to that, it was mentioned here that the flooding, for example, can be controlled if we don't excess in urban sprawl and urbanization. And there are so many other functions, from water purification and climate regulation, so it would be also a sink at the source, as we say, because in the soil there is much more organic carbon than it is in the biosphere and the atmosphere combined. So there are so many functions that derive from that, and we do need to be very careful in maintaining that. Now, in Europe, since 2006, the EU thematic strategy for soil protection was developed, and I've been glad to be involved with this for about 20 years now with European soil issues, but that never came to become a soil directive, and I don't need to elaborate why that happened, but there were 5 member states that blocked the directive for various reasons on national level, mostly. So I'd like to bring to the attention that if we deal with the Mediterranean, I will say a few words what's happening in the northern part as regarding soil, and then I will try to give you a concrete example from North Africa, a project where we as an institute followed up for some time. So this regional dialogue, and I'm not describing anymore now any of the other watersheds that are surrounding the Mediterranean, was thoroughly discussed by the previous speakers during this conference. But that type of dialogue for sure needs to be north-south and south-north, but as well as south-south, because there is a lot to be exchanged also between the neighboring countries which share similar climatic soil conditions at least, and socioeconomic as well. So everybody knows that the EU, and this refers mostly with the North Mediterranean countries that are EU member states, the European Green Deal, you don't see the word soil there, but soil is anyway part of the diagram, because there are so many aspects that are related to that. If you take, for example, farm to fork, there is the intention to reduce 50% the use of pesticides and 20% chemical fertilizers, or to bring 25% of the organic farming, of the EU farming into organic, and there is direct link with the soil quality. And so there are good reasons to do that. So the goal is to make 75% of the EU soils healthy by 2030, and that was well described by the Green Deal with the concept of soil health. We're talking now soil health. There are so many initiatives already ongoing, and there is no need to repeat each and one of them. But for example, if you take European soil programming on soil, it's a big project, research project, 40 million euros by the Commission, another 40 by the member state. Is coordinated by INRA, by the way, and we are right now evaluating 200 proposals for that. So it's great interest. There in December 2020 was established the EU Soil Observatories, managed by the Joint Research Center of the European Commission and ISPO. So there are so many initiatives already going, and the thematic strategy is already being also revised. So for the first time, within the program of Horizon Europe, we have a soil deal for Europe, a mission. Soil come next to cancer, climate change, cities, oceans. Never happened that thing before. Nothing against water colleagues, but we also, as soil community, feel a little bit more appreciated recently. So it is a need to do so, and some of these aspects are relevant for countries that are part of the Mediterranean Europe. No need to repeat each and every one of them, but if you look at the lower level, for example, 25% of the land is affected by unsustainable water erosion rates. And that is mostly, if you look at Spain, if you look at Greece, if you look at Italy, desertification is a big issue also in the Mediterranean part of Europe. We just conducted a survey, a project that was funded by the European Investment Bank to look at desertification risk. There is also a report of the European Court of Auditors who is pointing the finger that desertification has not been tackled very well by the Mediterranean part of Europe. So there are so many issues linked to that. If you look at the indicators, I will briefly mention that there are some of them which are very well described in that report that was published by the Soil Mission, and a significant name. Taking good care of soil is taking good care of life. So soil pollutants, including the excess of nutrients and salts, salinity was dealt thoroughly during these days. Soil organic carbon, for the important aspect that it has also for climate change. Looking at physical properties, you look at structure, texture, density, and how they relate then with soil sealing and erosion and compaction. Soil biodiversity, there is a soil biodiversity initiative right now going on, and we know only 1% of the soil microbiota. So it's a lot of work and research that needs to go on that. And then you look at soil chemical properties like nutrients, for example, NPK and pH. And then the last three were put on purpose to look at the most wider concept of land, not specifically the soil profile, that you look at the vegetation cover and what the impact that mostly in erosion, for example, or the landscape heterogeneity and the area of forest and wooded lands. So this is more or less what are the indicators that are followed, at least for the European part of the Mediterranean. Now I'd like to give you briefly also a quick example, and I'm going to south. This is a project that we as Institute followed in Egypt. It was called Matru Rural Sustainable Development Project. It was an integrated project which brought together several components on that, but I will focus mostly on the components that were dealing with land, soil and water management and water harvesting. It was implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture of Egypt, Desert Research Center. We as CIHEAM body were the executive agency, and it was funded by the Italian corporation. So there were several objectives that were included there. And as I said, I will focus mostly on the first one, on land and water management, and we'll look at the wadi. Everybody knows what is a wadi, is a watershed, what is in Arabic. On water harvesting, supplementary irrigation systems, and then collecting all the possible water that is there, which is very scarce, and I'll show you some pictures of that. And then we look also to other aspects like improving how they manage the olives, how they produce the olive oil, for example, which was terrible in that quality, and we try to improve. You know, Italy in virgin oil, it's a leader in the world. Organic farming, post-harvest, there was a lot of losses. We improved them also how to market their products. It's a region, I'll show you also some pictures afterwards, in the western part of Egypt, right on the border with Libya, and for sure not the comparison with Cairo or Alexandria. So these people need also to improve their living conditions, and we try to help them and improve the way that they market their products. They have some wonderful fix, but they didn't know how to sell them. So by improving this, they manage also to reach some markets far away to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So, and we built also with gender, and I remember that yesterday my friend Salvador mentioned, and that was a component, even though in those environments you hardly see a woman somewhere, but anyway, through the contacts we had, we tackled that aspect. Now everybody knows Egypt, I don't need to describe what is it, but we didn't look at irrigated agriculture, that's the concept. We look at rain-fed, even though it covers only 1% of what is cultivated in Egypt, but you have to do something also on those areas. And everybody knows Egypt's population is growing so fast, it may reach 150 million. It is the biggest cereal importer in the world. I mean, they do need to do something, and any resource possible, it needs to be used for that. So that is the area where we look. That's called Marsa Matruh. Marsa is the name of the city, and Matruh is the governorate. Our project was almost 50 kilometers far from Libya in those days. You know, Libya was in big trouble. So anyway, it went fine. These are mostly Bedouin people, Bedouin communities with their lifestyle. They were nomads, and some 50 years ago they decided to become farmers, but they didn't have that much experience how to do farming, so that's why we try to help. It's very hot, very dry, it rains, sometimes even 50 millimeters, and when it rains, you saw some pictures of Oman, which is similar to when it rains in here, it comes in a torrential way, and then see you next year, so there's no more rain. And you have to collect the rain when it comes, otherwise it's going to be lost. So this was one of the wadis that we rehabilitated. When personally and with my own colleagues from the institute, when we visited the area, it looks like you're on the moon or you're somewhere, I mean, and you see the gullies, how big they are. That shows that how much the powerful of the water that has been running has been able to create those gullies. So this is one of the wadis that we thought, okay, let's select this and to start intervening and making good use of that. So that was in called Wadi Karuba in 2013. You see the gully erosion. And then we started to intervene. The first thing was to make land leveling and building the dikes. So we subdivided the whole wadi in 13 dikes that were well measured, calculated. The good thing here is also that the soil deeper is clay, so it has good water retention capacity, and it is a good indicator. Otherwise, if it is sandy, it is easy to get lost. So the work started. Slowly we rehabilitated in the beginning 7 hectares. The work continued, and then by January 2015 we almost completed all building the dikes, and you can see that that was also a good rainy winter. Somehow it rains a lot. We had also one of our master students who conducted his thesis, and another one just finished now, and we included this in a research project, by the way, which is under evaluation right now. So we continue collaboration with the Desert Research Center there, and you see the water remain, otherwise it would have been lost. We measured these amounts. Another good thing to mention is that maybe not because of us, but at least maybe we gave a signal. IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development, and the Egypt government, in 2019 they said we want to continue investing in this type of wadi rehabilitation, and something like 81 million US dollars were decided to rehabilitate almost 8,000 hectares. We rehabilitated only 13, but we showed that it could be done, so that was the good thing about that. Now, it's not easy only to build dikes and to do some engineering work. You have to do also some kind of soil-related work, as we call it. So you have to increase at least soil organic matter, which is very, very low in this type of arid environment. So how to do that? Collecting every possible source of organic materials that would have been. Even we had an idea to collect the posetonia from the sea and mix it with the soil and transform it and put it into the soil so it can increase some of the organic matter. We implemented legume crops. Everybody knows that they have the potential to increase the nitrogen content. So mulching, minimum tillage after the olives and the figs were planted there. There were some existing best practices. I'm not saying that we started from scratch. These are also some olive varieties that, strangely enough, Puglia here is surrounded by olives. But if you see olives in 50 millimeters, they still survive. There was a type of variety adapted to that, and figs, as I said, were very good. So I'm almost coming to the end. I don't want to annoy you, but okay. So these were the wadis that were rehabilitated something like 20 years ago. They called it the German project. The issue is that they forgot about the surrounding slopes. So they dealt only with the lower part of the valley, the flat valley. We thought that something needs to be done also there, as you see the gully erosion. So practically, that is the wadi that we rehabilitated. So we built also a reservoir to collect some of the water when it rained. And we built these semicircle or half-moon terraces that they also can collect some water, but they also can control the erosion on the slopes. So that was somehow an innovation that we added into the activities of the project, and not let the semicircles empty. We tried to plant within them some of the native local plants that can be adjusted to dry, like Ficus indica. If they can make some fruits, that's much better. I'm coming close. And all the rest of the crops that you can see there, that can also use for grazing animals. And here it is at the end, you can see that we were able to store into the wadi some 50,000 cubic meters of water, and even by the end of July, you see that corner there, the red one, there were some 18,000 cubic meters still into the soil, and these were measured data we published, by the way. If not for this intervention, that water would have been lost. These are other examples and figures. These are the instrumentation that we implemented there from the meteorological station. That is one of our students. He's a researcher now at the Desert Research Center. That's my colleague, Antonio Coppola, University of Basilicata, and we've even built a weir to see whether the water that can get out of the wadi, because some people will say, you keep it here, but what happened with the local community downstream? Unfortunately, that was never happened because never rained that much that some water can get out of it. So anyway, these are some of the examples. Supplementary irrigation water was used at least for 2 parcels with that reservoir that I showed you up there. We even tested quinoa. So there were so many activities ongoing, and practically land and water management should be also accelerated and followed by crop management, agro-food value chain, and also, respecting also the local tradition. We work very closely with these people here. That was a ceremony when the wadi was given to the local Bedouin communities, and with this I thank you very much.
Thank you for this very interesting presentation. And now we have 10 to 15 minutes of exchanges. Michel. Donc Michel, Roberto Bassi ensuite. Michel.
Thank you very much, Professor. This is from Professor Marani. For many people in the world, Venice is a heritage jewel. And so when there is a contradiction, you have to solve it. You showed perfectly that Mose is an extraordinary facility, but in some cases it has as a consequence close the city. When it goes to the point that you have to choose, so you have to select, are the Venetian authorities, I know also the interest of the University of Padua, I was invited there, all the citizens are involved, all the Venetian people are involved in the decision. How can they be part in the decision of either use Mose facility or close the lagoon? Is this a democratic process, or the scientists, will the scientists be part of the process? What do you think?
Thank you.
Thank you for this comment and question. The process is somewhat democratic, as it should be. Also, the approval of the management plan that I talked about had to go through public consultations in which we received comments by the communities, all the stakeholders involved. And that is a fairly painful process, I have to say, because you get all types of comments that are oftentimes not based on real knowledge of the processes and risk derailing the project. So it's been going on for at least, so we released it in 2012, and we're in 2021, and still it's not being implemented because of that. I guess it's something that has to be done because people must be involved and invested, and it's a painful process. So my personal opinion is that there should be a consultation. It should be a guided one, so we should hear, when I say we, those who know about the dynamics and the process involved should hear what are the needs, what are the desires, what are the different objectives. In the end, there must be some deliberate choice that has to be made with knowledge of the process. So this is ongoing, and we have 50 years ahead. Not much. If you think about the MOSA was triggered by the 1966 event, so it took us 50 years to beat it. And so we're running out of time. It's something that we need to discuss now. Discussions are started also through academic institutions in Venice, for example, the Venice Academy of Literature, Science and Literature, and Art, which I belong to, is being instrumental in that, but it's only starting and we don't have much time. So I hope we won't go through the same painful process that I've witnessed already, even though I'm not very optimistic. If I may, I don't want to take too much time, but I mentioned the works that the Serenissima Republic did to divert rivers to the sea. That was another example. That took more than 50 years to decide because the stakeholders were the landowners and the merchants. The merchants wanted the lagoon to be deep so that ships could come and go, and the landowners wanted the rivers to be where they were, and it took more than 50 years to decide. And eventually, the merchants and military reasons took over, and it was decided. So it seems like 50 years is pretty much the shortest time we were able to take to make a decision. So yeah, we should rush.
Okay, thank you. Roberto Bassi, you have a question.
I also have a question for Marco. Marco, I'm going to ask you something that we revealed clearly my complete ignorance about the drawings. So, you stressed very much on the fact that there is less sediment than on the building. So, what about, what would be the limitation of bringing back some of the affluents into the lagoon? Which now you have two possibilities. So you could be regulating according to the necessity, right? So why I don't see a clear reason for that?
That's an excellent question, actually. We've looked into that. There are a few reasons that make it difficult to reintroduce the rivers. One is that water is polluted, and under current regulations you cannot do that. So you have to wait for quality goals to be achieved before you can even think about it. That's the first reason. The second reason is that bringing rivers back into the lagoon would bring some sediment in, but not much overall, because our rivers are now sediment poor. And we know this is a global phenomenon. because they've been diked upstream, all sorts of reasons. There's very little sediment circulating into the system. So we calculated that bringing in the Brenta River, which is one of the main ones around, would only bring about 70,000 cubic meters per year. And you've seen that the erosion is about 600,000. So it's not going to change the overall balance. Maybe locally it would help, but and that can be used certainly if it's a local objective that is what we decide to pursue.
D'autres questions? Pas forcément sur Venise, hein, l'Égypte et la nappe de la Grosse, c'est très important aussi. Allez-y.
That's a question to Mr. Pandi about the wadi systems. That we slow down the flow of the wadi, then you have sedimentation. So what about maintenance of this system when they are getting clogged? You have to take out the sediment every now and then and so on, because if you don't do that, in years it will degrade somehow.
Thank you. That's a good question. We are learning to do that. 20 years ago, when the first rehabilitation of the wadis was done, it looks like they are still resisting, so maybe it's a longer process. But it's as I said, it is a research center that is located right there. That wadi is part of the all ongoing activities that we are trying to follow. So most likely some form of sedimentation will occur. But be aware also that the surroundings are mostly rocky areas. It's not that much soil in the surrounding of the wadi. So there is a sedimentation, but it's rather not at high level. So, and I know that you have also in Israel some similar experiences. So, yeah.
Y a-t-il d'autres questions? Il me semble en tout cas que cette troisième table ronde a ramené quand même un petit peu de transversalité dans les préoccupations. C'est vrai que la partie sur les inondations, c'était très axé sur la vie humaine, parce que l'homme est quand même aussi quelque chose de relativement important quand même. Mais Guillaume Benoît.
J'ai été très intéressé par l'exemple égyptien, qui montre que même dans les endroits où les ressources sont le plus rares, si on peut toujours améliorer les choses et créer des biens et services, avec, et c'est quand même le grand sujet du développement durable, c'est comment on crée des biens et services répondre aux enjeux de la durabilité des ressources qu'on a. Et voilà, donc je pense qu'il ne faut pas rester que dans des visions de type DPSR, mais aussi comment on crée des biens et services. Alors je vais demander à ma consoeur Lantola sur le cas de la CRO, la réduction de la nappe, de la recherche de la nappe, du fait de l'étalement urbain, c'est bien parce qu'il y a un recul de la superficie irriguée, la recherche par irrigation du coin de cours, c'est ça?
Oui, c'est exactement ça. Parce qu'en fait, la recherche d'une nappe dépend à 80% de l'irrigation gravitaire.
D'accord. Parce que c'est intéressant de voir que l'agriculture irriguée peut produire des services très importants pour l'eau potable.
En tout cas, sur la Grosse, c'est absolument évident, parce que c'est un système qui fonctionne depuis le XVIe siècle. Et bon, ça apporte effectivement le plus grand de la nappe, mais ça a aussi construit les sols. À certains endroits, c'est pratiquement 1 mètre de sol qui ont été créés par l'irrigation, notamment par
les ressources peuvent augmenter.
Oui, c'est clair.
Grâce au génie des hommes.
Ouais.
Et c'est intéressant, c'est un peu le bon exemple comment, entre ville et campagne, on doit trouver des rapports gagnants-gagnants. C'est un très bel exemple aussi. Merci pour vos présentations.
C'est une question d'éducation, c'est-à-dire que vraiment c'est dans les villes qu'il faut faire comprendre que s'ils ont de l'eau facilement au robinet qui coûte pas cher, c'est parce que justement ils peuvent prélever dans la nappe plus facilement. Avec très peu de traitement en plus.
Une autre question, éventuellement, sinon nous allons déjeuner. Donc je vous remercie. Je remercie les orateurs de toute cette session qui ont été tout à fait intéressants et performants et même obéissants. Au modérateur, c'est important. Donc c'est Hélène, le maître, l'électricien. remercier d'être là. C'est la modératrice de cet après-midi. Ah oui, je voulais dire un mot. Je voudrais remercier M. Fouillard, qui est le rapporteur et qui va travailler demain pour présenter un résumé de l'ensemble des tables rondes de cette session et essayer d'en extraire des propositions d'amélioration dans la coopération des pays méditerranéens, donc dans l'action du GID et du CIHEAM réunis.
Mi servono 10-15 minuti, sarà il problema.
Le déjeuner est sous la serre, on l'attend, comme hier.
Alors, je ne sais plus si elle l'a envoyé direct de son ordinateur ou si...
Je voudrais dire à M. Thébault qu'il faut faire passer un message particulier à M. Master en lui disant, on regrette évidemment de ne pas avoir eu son intervention, mais que cette intervention figurera évidemment dans le petit livret qui rapportera les travaux de l'ensemble de la conférence. Vous le direz. Merci.